Welcome to season 6 of The Breakthrough Show, breakthroughs around the world, conversations with 40 guests from 40 different countries, acknowledging our similarities, honoring our differences, and celebrating our connection. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, the creator of the Breakthrough Show Network. For season 6, episode 3, I am so excited to welcome a brand new face on the show, someone I have come to consider a poetry mentor and a friend. She brings her natural coaching abilities to career development, leadership development, and executive coaching. She's an author and a poet, and after penning the moving poem For Love, appeared as a speaker on the TedX stage. Here to represent the country of Belgium, please welcome my friend, Dorothy Oger. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Such a great introduction.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you here. And did I say the name correctly?
Perfectly.
I am winning this season, my friends. I am winning. It's happening. I'm so thrilled to have you here. And I would love you to start out by sharing what you love about your country of Belgium.
What I love about Belgium, it's a small country. So it's like 10 million inhabitants or 11 million inhabitants. And you can cross, from one side to the other side in a couple of hours or something like that. So that makes it really special. I love that it's very diverse, multiculturally. We have 3 official languages: French, Dutch, German. English is a non-official language. We have in the capital city of Brussels, where I live, we have, more than 200 languages spoken. So that's a very, very rich country in that sense. We have lots of great food, so I love that as well. So we have the French fries, is actually Belgian, they say so, and the chocolates and the beer and the cheese, all these things, and some really beautiful cities to go and visit, and so. And I think Belgian people, usually people come from outside of Belgium and they come to work and live in Brussels for a few years, and then they tend to stay for longer periods of time. And Belgians need to get known, but once you know them, then you're enjoying the friendships that they can provide. So.
I love that. I love all of those things. I think, it's we've talked about this so many times on many different programs on the Breakthrough Show Network, that we are very attached as human to our food traditions and culture. And, it's interesting to see that. And do you have food for like everything in Belgium, like we do here in the United States, like where someone dies, we eat food. Someone is born, we eat food. Someone graduates, we eat food. Do you have that same thing there?
Yes, we eating together, having dinner, having food is something that's a very important part of the culture here. Both because, of course, we have different. We have the French-speaking and the German-speaking and the Flemish-speaking communities. So for all of the communities, it's very important. That's where socializing happen, which is sometimes annoying when you don't want to go to the restaurant all the time, or you don't want to be eating food all the time. But really, that's if you declare to your parents that you are changing the sort of diet that you're on, that's like a declaration of war,
Wow.
So because it's so important to follow the culinary traditions of your family, so. And we kind of are meat eaters in that sense, but that's also, that varies. But food is important.
I
Food
imagine
and coffee.
Coffee
and beer.
And beer. I mean, listen, those are the 3 things that you need to have in life: food, coffee, beer. It's just it.
And chocolates also, of course.
Oh, yes. 4th food group right there. Absolutely. I think I would have maybe struggled when I became vegan if I lived in Belgium.
Yeah, I mean, now it's better, of course, and especially that
Yeah.
depends where you are as well. But you get more and more opportunities and more people who are paying attention and becoming vegan or vegetarian, or having different sort of preferences for foods. But I think, yeah, maybe even 7, 10 years ago, you might have struggled,
Hmm.
you know.
So you mentioned all these languages, and we obviously know you speak English because we're understanding you very well here right now. But what other languages are you fluent in?
I'm also fluent in French. French is my mother tongue. That's how I was raised. But my mother's tongue is Flemish. So
Mm.
I mean, my parents were both trilingual. So it's kind of a bit tricky. But my mother learned French when she married my father, actually,
Oh,
because they went to Africa for when they got married, and it's a long story. But anyway, so I've learned to drive in Flemish. I have done some note lessons in Flemish, but that didn't last for very long.
mm.
I studied at university in French. My mother and we write together in Dutch, but we speak in French with each other. So, I'm kind of that very strange mixture of both. But I'm more French speaking than Flemish speaking.
That's amazing to me because I'm relearning Spanish now because I took it in school. I also took French in school. It's very common here in the States for us to try French and Spanish when we're in school and then see which one we like the best and then go on to take that in high school. But I never stuck with it. I took it because I needed the credit in school. It was something that I needed. But I've met so many people on social media that speak Spanish, and I want to go to the Dominican Republic one day. And so I thought, well, I'll go back and read. It's not like riding a bike. I remember the most inappropriate things from school days. So is it challenging though when you're going from one language or another? Like, is it just natural when you start speaking another language, or is it like, is you slip up sometimes? I'm interested of how that actually works.
I sleep up all the time, so so don't worry. Um, and it depends. Sometimes, like I remember, I went to Northern Ireland for 1 year as a French language assistant, and I remember before I was coming back to Belgium, a couple of weeks before I left Belfast, I started dreaming in French again. But I had gone into dreaming in English, so I was kind of mentally preparing myself, and I think it will be very context dependent. So if I'm watching a movie in English or participating to workshop in English, then my vocabulary, my flow will be in English, and switching back, back and forth is works. But I might have an accent, or I might have a difficulty with a word of vocabulary or something like that. So that's yeah. A trick for you would be to sort of speed read a dictionary, bilingual dictionary, and that would help you to find your words easier and to be less afraid to speak. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's probably also important to surround ourselves with people that maybe are
Yeah.
forgiving.
Yeah, that's forgiving and still sticking with it.
Mm,
Because that's one of the regrets of my mother, is that she didn't stick with some of the Dutch language or something like that. And whereas my partner is Flemish speaking and he can stick with it. So, and I would also switch if you're speaking to me and you want to speak French, and it's you're struggling. I will come to your rescue, which is
yeah.
not a very good thing. I try not to, but I will come to your rescue, and whereas my partner will absolutely, stay with that, and you might get very frustrated and angry, but you would be forced to practice.
I feel like our partners would be best friends in that
It
way.
could be.
Because I tend to be I'm the helper, I am the forgiving one, I'm the one that's like, let's do this together, and he's like, this is just the way it is, It just is. Okay. And that's it.
Yeah, so I guess he
um,
plays the rules of the game by, he doesn't let
yeah,
the children win or anything like that. So
that's it.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah, yeah,
But that's why we're good partners, because we balance each other out in that
exactly.
way. Well, I'm very, just like most of the multi-passionate people that come onto the show, you have a million and one breakthrough moments to share, but we're going to try to zoom in on some of those today. So I'm excited to dig into that with you. One of the things that I mentioned is that you have become a sort of poetry mentor to me. I never considered myself to be a poet or any, but it's like anything else. I never considered to myself to be half the things that I am today. And so let me start by asking you this. Did you, uh, were you really into poetry as a child? Is that something that you pictured yourself doing as you gotten older? And how maybe does it look different now than it did when you were younger?
Okay. I started writing when I was 7 years old.
Mm.
And for some reason, when I was 11, the school teacher asked us to write a poem, and she loved the poem I wrote. And so she asked me to share it in the group, in the classroom. And the reception must have been good because I was really ecstatic about it. And that has kind of confirmed me to continue to write poems and to continue to share them. So
Mm.
I didn't get any trauma of public speaking as a result of that, which is what often happens. So I'm lucky there. And then my father was also very supportive of that, and my family. I remember also that my sister was so helping me with some poems, or whenever I had some questions or some rhymes or some words I was looking for. So, and of course, as life goes on, you write a bit less, you write a bit more. And then I went to NLPU, so NLP University in Santa Cruz, California, where I've studied to become an NLP practitioner, master practitioner, and so on. And there I started I restarted connecting with poetry and sharing my poems there. And that was also a very important moment for me, because eventually, they would expect me to sort of share a poem in front of 100 people as a result of a workshop, or one of the day session or things like that. So that was really beautiful. And so I've continued to write poems, and then little by little I also realized, okay, this is something that's it's something special that I do, that I can do. I never envisaged myself to be a poet later. I just envisaged myself writing poems.
Right.
It's not like I gave myself a name or a goal or an ambition or that type of things. Even though I guess if I would imagine myself as a teenager, I would imagine myself being interviewed, about a thriller I would have written or something like that. So, but never really as a poet, but more as a novel author, which I'm not currently. Might change. And also, I've really experienced the effects of poetry on myself and also on other people, amongst other with the poem "For Love" that you mentioned in the beginning of the sequence in the introduction.
Yeah. You create, and I'll digress on this in just a moment here so that we can continue, but you create the most delicious space for writing. And it's not, the interesting thing is the focus, I feel like you go into this space and the focus is not writing a poem. The focus is not like, I'm here to write, let me get my pen, my paper, and it's very, because I feel like that can almost be very cold. Your space is so warm and inviting, and it's just about expressing yourself. And suddenly, a few hours have passed, and your expressions have become poetry. And
Mhm.
it's just the most magical thing that happens. And so I would love to talk about that poem for love and tell us about how that poem even came to be.
Mhm. So there is an important day for that poem to have taken place. So it was on the 22nd of March 2016. So we are coming up to the anniversary, the sixth anniversary, and at that time, for the well, not for the first time or anything like that, but at that time there is we Brussels was attacked, so we had three bombs explode, one at the airport and a couple of bombs at the metro station. And a friend of mine was killed in the explosion in the metro station.
Mm,
Someone that I had spent the weekend with in a workshop where I would write poems and share poems. So that's an important element, I think, here. And so, and at first we just knew that he was missing, so we didn't know that he had been killed. So there was a lot of hope and sadness and all kinds of emotions going through. And of course, we were connected. We were glued to the screen, glued to the phone, and all the whole day, the whole night. And on the Wednesday, like around I guess 11:30 or something like that, I just felt I had to write because I couldn't do anything with my emotions. I felt completely blocked and going from one emotion to another, thinking about so many things. And of course, there were many other elements that were contributing to that as well from prior to the attacks. But so I decide I have to write, I have to express it, I have to transform what I'm feeling, I have to do something, and that's what I know to do. So I'm
mm,
not someone who's going to go in the streets and search or start I don't know, fighting with others, or I just, or maybe even create connections with other people. So I would tend to not anymore, but I used to process these type of things on my own.
mm,
And one of the things that came out of this is that beautiful the beautiful support you can get from connecting with a community. And so I did a first try it. I wrote two sentences and that wasn't working, and so I waited a little bit more, and then suddenly that line came: "I shall stand for love," and
mm,
so the poem flew from there. I mean, it was done in a couple of seconds, I guess, or
mm,
and so then I physically felt the poem, the words of the poem healing me, and so I shared it with some of the people I was connecting with, who were also together in that workshop during the weekends, and they asked me to share it on social media. So I shared it further, and someone in from NLP, from when I met in Santa Cruz, who is an Italian-based woman named Ilaria. No,
mm,
she's a London-based Italian woman named Ilaria. Sorry, whom I who wanted to hear the poem in Italian, and so she made a translation in Italian. And so, and from that moment on, we sort of invited people who wanted to translate the poem,
mm,
and the translation started pouring in. Um, and I usually translate my poems, so my poems will be in English and in French,
uh-huh,
sometimes in Dutch. And here I made some version in French, but I wrote it in English. And then this translation started pouring in. So we had, Finnish and French and Dutch and Chinese and Japanese,
Wow.
and Vietnamese. The night of Thursday to Friday, it was like Taiwanese, Vietnamese, Chinese pouring in. Someone produced a song on Friday morning that I got in my inbox. An Englishman in Japan did that song, and so that just kept on, coming in and in and in and in, and everybody was. It was what I thought was really interesting is how much support I got from that, and also how much people got from being able to do something, being able to express it in their own words, and the perfection of the translation that didn't matter, and that doesn't matter. And that's what I love about this, is that I have three versions of the Spanish,
Wow.
because because people wanted to produce their own version, and
Mm.
because also there's a Mexican version, and there is a Costa Rican version, all these things. So we have two Esperanto version, English Esperanto and a French Esperanto, all these things. So, and
That's
that's what I love about
incredible.
that. Yeah, yeah.
It feels like it almost just became its own energy force, its own
Hmm.
being, and took on a life of its own.
Yeah.
When you wrote it, you obviously had your own thoughts and feelings and why you wrote it and all of that. Have you come to, since the time that you wrote it and what it has become now in all of these different languages and everything else, have you come to look at it differently at all, or has your thoughts or feelings changed around it somehow, or maybe expanded in some way?
The truth of the poem is still that same truth, so that hasn't changed. I still use it as a kind of a mantra as well. So whenever I'm in a kind of a difficult situation or anything like that, I will say, okay, so if I shall stand for love, if I stand for love in this situation, what's the courageous choice, if you like? What's the right choice, with that spirit from the poem? So that hasn't changed at all. I noticed today, for instance, a lot of people are sharing the poem
Mm.
right now, because it really is helpful in terms of the COVID situation that we have, and the polarization. So there's a lot of people who are moved to tears by the poem when they read it. Um, there's actually a friend of mine who's has postcards with a poem, and she shares them, and she says it has such a great effect.
Mm.
So that's for me. It's as you said, it's like uh, the poem is on its own, in the sense of I'm there to support it. I'm there
Mm.
to give it shape, because that's of course it's through my experience, through my expertise in writing, or my ability to with languages, or with empathy, with all of the thinking I've done before, because I was also concerned about how Europe is welcoming migrants, and all these things. They work into that poem as well. But I'm here to support it. And today, what is different maybe is that I also feel like, because there's that strange thing that it is both a happy thing, that poem, because it brings hope, it helps people become resilient, it brings healing, it brings a sense of purpose, it connects people worldwide, but at the same time it's connected with a sad, tragic event.
Mm.
And today, so 6 years later, it feels like I can also uh, promote, in a way, or inhabit the principle of I Shall Stand for Love, which is also, we call it on the Facebook page, where we gather all of the versions, as a We Shall Stand for Love. And that becomes more of a concept, or a community, or a movement, and it feels clearer for me to be supportive of that. So detaching it in a way, in some way, freeing it in some ways from the connection with my friends, even though, of course, he's in his spirits, and with what he was representing, and also the situation is part of the poem for sure, forever. But there's that sense of maybe a second or third or fourth movement that is taking place with the poem.
Mhm. I'm so moved by the whole concept of what has happened from this one poem. And I'm a little biased because I went to the We Shall Stand for Love poetry workshop. And here's the thing, you had a choice of
Mhm.
this was your baby, this was your thing. I see poems and songs and shows and all books as our little children that we are we are bringing out into the world, right? We birth them the same way that a child is brought into the world. And you had a choice. You could have said, this is my baby, this is will stand alone, this is what it is, but you have allowed it to do as we do our children, which is to raise them to the best that we can and then allow them to fly and become their own. And sometimes that's hard. Have you ever found it challenging to to see it take different shapes, or has it just been an honor for you? What is your take on
Mm-hmm.
that?
I think 99% of the time I've just been blessed and touched by how the poem has evolved, or how it continues to be shared, and how it continues to also to be translated or spoken, or so I just I feel honored and blessed. And it continues to heal me in some ways. You know, it has such a profound effect, not only with regard to what happened with my friends, but also with mourning my father. When I mean, he died when I was 17 years old.
Wow.
But grieving for my friend, and this poem has helped me, you know, process my father's death. So that's also pretty big thing. Um, no, I must say I've been worried that maybe it might be used for political reasons, or
Mhm.
it might be misinterpreted, you know, that type of things. But to be honest, there's only at one point someone who says, you know, your poem, maybe it's a little bit kind of romantic or something like, or
Mm.
fluffy or something like that, which it is not. But I can get that they think that, you know, and especially when you speak about terrorism, you know, they were more in favor of taking arms and you know, and
Mhm.
shooting whoever is
Right.
responsible. So, but I can understand that as well. That's the anger. That anger, you know, needs to be processed as well, or expressed, but in a better way than taking arms, I feel. So no, I must say this is an incredible story, also because of the ripple effect of it, and because it doesn't seem to be misappropriated or
Right.
misused. I remember one friend, he was concerned about one of the language translations. He felt it wasn't done properly, but he's also a translator, and you know, so it's very interesting to see what happens with that. And I've always really invited people to do it from the heart and not from a technical point of view. And so I said, well, you see the Brussels Flemish dialect there.
Yes.
I said, well, you know, I know you speak this dialect, which is a dying dialect in Belgium. And I said, how about you write it in that language? You know, and he thanked me afterwards, because basically he wanted to do something, and he was in also in that stuck state. And because he was able to write, you know, to express that feeling with his, you know, dialect words, that helped with his, you know, sort of unease about the quality of the translation or something like that. So I've had people who say, can I talk to this person, because I have another version of the poem, and I think we could do one together, you know, that would sort of reconcile the various versions we have. In other cases, I've just, you know, I said, well, you have a more regional version of the same language. Yeah, sure, put it up. You know, I have three versions of French, and there's one I use more because it just, because of course the first translation I made was also, you know, in that period of time, and you know, some of the vocabulary was more difficult, or that type of things. And I feel like, you know, the final version I made is better, you know, then I would use that. But all three are available. You can see the history of that. So, you know,
Mm.
there's no It's just I will also the English version actually in the TEDx talk. I've made it a bit different. So sometimes I adapt it a little bit, but that version is still there, and people can see, okay, that's the first version, and that's the second version, and that's the third version, or that's
Yeah.
the Spanish version from Mexico, the Spanish version from Costa Rica, or so that's I
I
think that's
almost picture in my head like and maybe this has been done. Maybe it's just me saying something that's already been done, but I almost picture in my head like um, it being read on a video and starting out with you reading the first line and then every line being read in a different language and then finishing out with the end with you again. It was so powerful for me. Even just now, if you guys saw on the screen scrolling through all of those languages, it's just there's something so beautiful and moving about that just it transcends a
yeah,
location and language and it's just beautiful. And what I was saying before about you just allowing it to turn into what it is. And when you hosted the poetry workshop, We Shall Stand for Love, I found it also terribly beautiful that everybody in the workshop processed it in such a different way as
yeah,
well. It was amazing. It was amazing. And I'd love for any of our friends that were there at that workshop to share below in the comments your experience with that as well, to share with other people. And I even shared this morning, the day that we're recording this on Project Joy, I said, my joy is that I get to spend time with Dorothy today. And I was sharing about the experience from the workshop and all of that as well, because it was truly, it's so fascinating to me how we all process things in different ways, but we all at the core, I feel like we want the same things. We are passionate about seeing change in the world in a very similar way, and we may believe very different things or see things in a different way, but I feel like deep down we want that. We all stand for love in some kind of way,
yeah, yeah.
so I'm so moved by all of that. And I would love for you tell everybody how it went from, how did you go from the poem and writing that and all of that to being on the TEDx stage to share about the experience?
Yeah, there was this is still my friend Ilaria, who I was it was I guess not very long after I wrote the poem, but probably a month or two or three after. I'm not sure anymore, but I was well, and maybe I need to go back to NLP University in Santa Cruz, the time I went in 2015, where I part of the process was to express an intention, and my intention was to see 5 language versions of my poetry, and for me to step foot on all continents, right? To travel the world with that. I didn't know at the time that it would come to 70 language versions, and that setting foot on the continent, it was a virtual thing. But the poem did do that. It went everywhere. But I also expressed, I was thinking, because a couple of friends there were speakers, and I thought, okay, this is something I know I share my poem publicly, but my public speaking could be better, and and a TEDx could be an interesting thing to do, right? So I planted that seed in 2015, in August or July 2015. So after I wrote this poem, and it was spreading all over the world, I thought, there's something, how can I support it further? How can I make it more known? How can I share it even more? And so I thought about TEDx, because that's also part of the one of the intention I had, because for me, the question I always ask myself is, what is the right thing for me to do? Seeing who I am, right? Like, I'm usually not someone who go, on strike, or become a politician, or that type of thing. So become violent. So that's not me, right? So there's a role for everyone, and there's kind of a place for to express your uniqueness in everything that you do, or every decision that you make. And so for me, it made sense to say, well, maybe there is a platform, a public platform that I can use to share this beautiful poem. And so I asked my friend Ilaria, and she introduced me to the open mic pitch, organized by TedX Saxion University, a Dutch platform, and a brilliant group of people who actually managed the TEDx talk in a very, very professional way. So I was blessed to start there and to have that experience and to be allowed to do a pitch, and then to come back, and and then I went to Ivory Coast, and shared also a TEDx talk with people in Damascus, Syria. So that was also a beautiful, beautiful experience where we wove the first TEDx with messages of love from the participants of that open mic pitch, and put it on postcards with a poem, send the postcards to Lebanon, where they were picked up by the organizer of the Syrian TED conference for students. And so she was able to share those poems to the participants there.
Amazing. Did you? We have a little look here at some of your TEDx talk as well. Do you have you done any other speaking on the stage like you did since TEDx, or was this like a Dorothy did it and now she's done?
I guess this sort of platforms has replaced it a little bit.
Yeah.
I do speak in public often in terms of training or workshops and that type of thing. So in that manner, no. But I would love to continue. So I know there was like a possibility to put your candidacy for TEDx Brussels, I think, and that's also, it's a very tough TEDx to get into. But I was kind of okay, but I don't know what topic I would talk about yet. So I kind of like to set the intention, but not to force it.
Right.
To go open-handed, as our friend Darren would say, because you don't know what would happen. That would be even better than what you had hoped for or imagined. So yeah, I think there's a future in terms of sharing about poetry, or about my experience on platforms such as TEDx. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Follow me.
Yeah. Follow Dorothy on all social media to find out what's next. I would love to know. I know that you're what could happen, and in keeping that possibility of what could be next open is an amazing thing. If you could imagine, is there anything you've imagined that could happen for yourself next that would just be an amazing thing for you? Like what could you envision for yourself today that you could see yourself doing maybe in the future?
For me, I think just more of what I'm doing now, more, or I can imagine myself indeed sharing writing, helping people to connect with their creativity, with their genius, like we've done with the poetry workshop. Every time I see even one person write their first poem and be moved by it, extraordinary. So if more of that, more of sharing, because apparently I have some viewpoints that are maybe different, or a creative way of looking at things, and sharing that is important to me. And I'm also writing songs and learning to sing and learning music. So I would love to do a singing show with Miss Dugas. Why not? That would be wonderful. So yeah. So I think more of that, more of connecting with myself, with others, through creativity, through our own genius, through that space that's makes it possible to be who you are, and to express who you are, and to transcend who you are as well.
Breakthroughs are about more than you might think. They're about discovering who you are, digging deep, reaching to the core of your soul. They're about healing yourself, understanding your beliefs, creating a ripple effect. And it's not just those initial moments that matter. It's about using them to bring more joy into our own lives and the lives of others. It's about having fun, letting loose, enjoying every moment life has to offer. It's about finding a safe space. It's about creating connection. Join us each and every day for exclusive programming, special events, and a community to call home, where we invite you to explore, change the way you look at and live your life, and go beyond the breakthrough. So we ask you, are you ready? We'll see you online at thebreakthroughshow.com.
Любовь — моя крепость, любовь — моя крепость, даже с тяжелым сердцем, даже с поломанной душой.
Я відстоюю кохання, бо нам треба більше світла, щоб не було більше смерті, що летить за сколки.
Любовь — моя крепость, потому что она сильнее злейшего. Без чего же мертвые, без власти сил, без бомб.
Я відстоюю кохання із розбитою душею, коли серце моє плаче.
Любовь, моя крепость, чтобы наши дети были невредимые, чтобы наши друзья были защищенные, чтобы наши границы были открыты.
I shall stand for love, even with a broken soul, even with a heavy heart.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm very excited to come to you now with our quick fire questions that we are asking all of our guests this season. I am super excited because I think, like I said, I just as your poem has done, bringing people together from around the world, there's so much that we have in common. I think we can choose to honor where we each come from and the differences that we have. But also I love that this brings us together and we can celebrate our connection. So are you ready for our quick fire questions?
Yes.
It's going to be good. Okay, here we go. Number one, what is your morning beverage of choice?
Coffee.
I just knew that was coming.
If not hot water, but it's coffee.
Okay. When are you most productive?
If I wake up and I daydream about what I'm going to work on, or then I'm very productive from that moment on, right? So it could be, but I can also be productive late at night or in the middle of the night. If I don't manage to fall asleep, then at some point I'll probably, get up and get writing or whatever it is that is holding. So yeah, I'm more of a night owl to be
okay.
completely honest, but that daydreaming is so important that when I do that,
very
I get
good.
productive.
All right. Which season is your favorite?
I love the freshness of autumn and the red leaves, but I love even more when the spring is starting to sort of call to us. But I think my favorite season would be summer. Winter, not so much. I don't like the Christmas period and the New Year period.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. What is something that you're learning right now?
The piano,
Okay.
singing,
I love
the
it.
ukulele, but I'm not doing it too much at the moment. So yeah.
All right. What were your best and worst subjects in school?
My worst subject of school's mathematics. Yeah, coupled with science, but that varied. And my best topic, I guess, would have been, I have no idea actually. Maybe French, probably, or languages, literature.
I could see that. I could see
Yeah.
that. What scares you?
Oh, okay. So that's a quick. The first thing that came to my mind is drowning, but not to have air, not to breathe. That scares me.
That's a good
Whether
one.
it's a metaphorical not breathing or a real not breathing.
I feel like this question is going to be redundant based on your poem, but I'm going to ask anyway. Have you ever been in love?
Yes.
What inspires you?
The people's genius, people's heart, people's creativity. Yeah.
How do you enjoy your downtime?
Oh, it could be drawing. It could be doing some music. It could be watching TV. I used to read. I don't read so much anymore novels. I can watch some YouTubes. Walking, playing volleyball. I'm part of
Volleyball,
a
really? I
team.
would have never guessed that about you. You like volleyball.
Yeah. So.
All right. And finally, which culture do you deeply respect and or want to learn more about other than your own?
I was, as mentioned, my parents were in Africa. So I was conceived in Africa, but I was born in Belgium. So I have this kind of tenderness or love or a curiosity about. And of course, there's so many different countries and tribes and cultures, on the continent of Africa. So, but I have this kind of connection with I guess the Black African culture. I call it this. Even though I know that there's difference. Like Rwanda is different, and of course, but I have this curiosity.
I love it. I love it. Well, you did fantastic. We got through all of them in under 5 minutes.
Cool.
We did it. I love it. I love your answers. And I'm super excited for everybody to hear them and tie them into some of the other answers we've heard this season already. And I love how the first 3 episodes of this season are so creative. We had Kat talking about poetry. Ivinder talked about songwriting. And now we have Dorothy talking about poetry as well. So very good. Very creative start to this season. I love it.
Nice.
Well, I love that you have all of your information available for everybody at dorothyauger.eu. Would you tell everybody what they can find there, Dorothy?
If you go into the poetic harvesting tab, you'll have some poems. If you want more poems, you can follow me on Instagram, English French. So you have to go down. I need to redo my website. Actually, I say a little bit about coaching. I say a little bit about myself. I organize workshops, but I don't always advertise them there. So, it's hard to follow me. I must say. I have a mailing letter, but I don't really send a lot of mails. So you can follow me there as well. You can follow me. You can find videos and poems on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. You can find on Instagram. I sometimes do live on Instagram and LinkedIn, where we will just goof around, as we say, and write a poem, have a discussion, share some music, write a poem, that type of things, or more serious topics, but all relating to connecting with the genius inside, I would say, and living an integrative life. So yeah, you can find me on Medium.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, so
very good. Well, we will have, of course, all of Dorothy's information in the show notes below. And I would love for you to share in the comments, if you're watching us live or on the replay, what is your biggest takeaway from Dorothy's story? Maybe did you learn anything new about Belgium? We'd love to know that as well. Dorothy, thank you so much for being a part of the Breakthrough Show for season 6. And I'm excited to have you part of the Breakthrough Show Network family now. I feel like you fit right in beautifully.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure, as always, to be talking with you. So.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, it's been another amazing episode of the show today. I want to thank you so much for watching or listening wherever you are in the world. I want to remind you, if you're in the US, Canada, and Puerto Rico, you can join our text community by texting the word breakthrough to 256-685-7092. If you are outside of those areas, or you're like, listen, lady, don't text me, that's fine too. You can join our Discord community from anywhere in the world by going to bit.ly/Discord Breakthrough and chat with past guests, hosts of the different shows on the Breakthrough Show Network, and of course, fans of the show as well. Thank you so much to Dorothy for being here today. It's been another fantastic episode. I want to remind you to join us again next week for another amazing episode. I believe we are going to South Africa next week. Very excited about that. And I want to invite you to make joy a priority in your life, to find the breakthroughs that are there if you just look for them. And we will see you next week for another episode. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and we'll see you next time.